Good to see everybody this evening. Hopefully the things that we'll study will be beneficial to you and helpful to you, and I've prepared something that will help us all. I want to discuss tonight loneliness and being alone, and I was trying to think personally times where I've really been this way, and I struggled a little bit with this. I have a pretty good network, as you may know. And the first thing that popped to my mind was one time after basketball camp at Lee High School, I sat in the back of the school for like what felt like 5 hours waiting for Mom to come pick me up. But sometimes it can be location. You know, you're alone. You're literally physically alone. And in that instance, I was. I remember being bored more so than being fearful or scared, but I was alone. I think at times, particularly the first time I left for college, driving down Cactus Street and thinking, wow, I'm by myself. This is crazy. I'm leaving everybody, right, to go to somewhere that hadn't spent a lot of time going to Austin, and that was something that I guess was a little bit of a lonely feeling in some ways. More than one occasion even. But like I said, it's not necessarily location and physical location. You can be in a state of mind that puts you in a lonely place. And you may not tell anybody about that, and that's what makes it even lonelier. Is when you're wrestling with something that you may or may not need help with, or probably need help with, and you don't feel like you can talk to anybody, and you're just alone on the issue. That's really the worst kind of loneliness that we can think about. And it causes some people depression and pain, and most people don't want to feel like this at all. We have a nature within us to not be that way. I know there's people that I've known of that have either lost their spouse or gotten a divorce, and they immediately are working on finding the next spouse because they're worried about the loneliness that they may endure later on. And I get that. If you'll turn to number 651 in your songbook, and we're going to look at a few songs here, but 651, where no one stands alone. In the second verse it says, like a king, I may live in a palace so tall, with great riches to call my own, but I don't know a thing in this whole wide world that's worse than being alone. And that certainly may ring true to everybody here. This song talks about even as I was a king and I had great riches and pretty much had everything, there is nothing worse than being alone. And I suppose we can appreciate that verse. And I want to talk about that this evening. You know, we need to know that no matter how alone we may feel in this life, God is always with us. You know, if you really think about Jesus' life leading up to the crucifixion, his life was very popular. He was a very popular person. He was not someone that was alone at all. And I want to look at a few stories and accounts of this. Nothing new, but just get familiar with it. Mark chapter 2. We're gonna flip around quite a bit. I was gonna use my phone, but it's dying, so I'm gonna flip with some of y'all, and y'all can fly to the next one and wait for me to get there. Mark chapter 2, in verse 1. And again he entered into Capernaum after some days, and it was noised that he was in the house. And straightway many were gathered together, and so much that there was no room to receive them, no, not so much as about the door. And he preached the word unto them. And they came unto him, bringing one sick of the palsy, which was born of 4. And when they could not come nigh unto him for the press, they uncovered the roof where he was. And when they had broken it up, they let down the bed wherein the sick of the palsy lay. So this is an instance where Jesus is not only not alone, but there's a lot of people gathered around him. So much so that they had to cut a hole in the roof to lay this paralyzed man down so Jesus could heal him. The crowd was so large that this man had to be lowered through the roof. John chapter 6 and verse John chapter 6 and verse 2. It mentions there, and a great multitude followed him because they saw his miracles, which he did on them that were diseased. And so we see crowds following Jesus because of the miracles and healings he performed. Not a life of loneliness just yet. Skipping down to verse 5, it says, When Jesus then lifted up his eyes and saw a great company come unto him, he saith unto Philip, Whence shall we buy bread that these may eat? And this he said to prove him, for he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 pennyworth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may take a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, saith unto him, There is a lad here which hath 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes, but what are they among so many? And I'll stop there, but I think I gave a lesson not too long ago about this, but y'all know the story of the 5 fish and the 2 pieces of bread. We talked about that in one of my lessons not too long ago. And it says that Jesus, of course, fed 5,000 people. Now, 5,000 people is a lot of people now. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot of people. You know, some of us have been to a brother meeting. I think they can hit up to 1,000 people, and we go, man, there's just a lot of people here. Multiply that by 5. That's how many people were there that he fed. There's a lot of people in this group of Jesus. Verse 15, it says, When Jesus therefore perceived that they would come and take him by force to make him a king, he departed again into a mountain himself alone. And so we see here the beginning of a point in time where Jesus is going to start being alone. Now just imagine, he's somebody that has been walking around. People are hearing about the things that he's doing. People are striving to reach out to him to get healing and to be prayed over, have the miracles that Jesus performed on him. There's thousands of people gathering with him. He's not alone, but as we read here, after this event takes place, he goes up to the mountain to be alone. John chapter 16. Jesus is about to come to grips with the fact that his days as someone that's going to be with a bunch of people is about to end. In chapter 16 of John, verse 30, it says, Now are we sure that thou knowest all things, and needest not that any man should ask thee? By this we believe that thou camest forth from God. Jesus answered them, Do you now believe? Behold, the hour cometh, yea, and now is now come, that ye shall be scattered, every man to his own, and shall leave me alone. And yet I am not alone, because the Father is with me. These things I have spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. And so Jesus knew in this moment his popularity would end. And he's told the disciples this. And he knew that he would be left alone by those that he called friend and apostle and disciple. He knew that that was going to be the end of their gatherings. And even though he knew that he was to be left alone, he says there in these verses that God never left him. In Matthew chapter 28, verse 20, we don't have to turn there because it's a familiar reading, but he basically tells us that, after preaching the Great Commission, that he would never leave us. And he'll never leave us, and that's a great promise, and I want us to think about that this evening. That even in our loneliness, even in the times where maybe we are in great despair, he stays with us, and he is with us all the time. And Jesus suffered loneliness, and we're going to study about it tonight so that we wouldn't have to. So let's look at a few moments of his life beyond this. As we all know, at this moment, Jesus is about to be betrayed. Betrayed, not portrayed. Betrayed. And so he is in the garden, and we all know, alone in the garden. And we're going to read in Matthew chapter 26, and we're going to kind of jump around in these accounts between Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And Matthew chapter 26, starting in verse 36. Says, Then cometh Jesus with them unto a place called Gethsemane, and saith unto the disciples, Sit ye here while I go and pray yonder. And he took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, began to be sorrowful and very heavy. Then saith he unto them, My soul is exceeding sorrowful, even unto death. Tarry ye here and watch with me. He went a little further, and fell on his face, and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt. And he cometh unto the disciples, and findeth them asleep, and saith unto Peter, What, could ye not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. He went away again the second time, and prayed, saying, O my Father, if this cup may not pass away from me, except I drink it, thy will be done. And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. And he left them and went away again, and prayed the third time, saying the same words. Then cometh he to his disciples, and saith unto them, Sleep on now, and take your rest. Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. Behold, he is at hand that doth betray me. And so we see here, he's asked his closest friends to stay up with him, to watch and pray with him, because he's agonizing over what is about to happen to him. And it's really hard for me to get my head around this, because there's been times where I've stayed up, hey, stay up. Your turn at Mike Tyson's about to be up, And I've opened my eyes and stayed awake as hard as I could, and was able to do that, And that's a silly example, but can you imagine the Son of God asking you to just stay up one night with him, and you can't even do that? They left Jesus alone. They left him in loneliness before he was betrayed. Isaiah 53:3, it alludes to this in a prophecy. Isaiah 53:3, it says, He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid as it were our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. And so they prophesied of those that would hide their face from him, that would fall asleep on him, that would forget what kind of agony and pain he was in. He knew all that. He knew all that. He prays 3 times. Each time he went to his disciples for sympathy and encouragement and found them sleeping, leaving him to grieve alone. He told Peter, Could you not just stay up 1 hour with me? Luke chapter 22, another kind of version of this account. Luke chapter 22 and 45, it says, And when he arose up from prayer, he was come to his disciples. He found them sleeping for sorrow. They're sleeping from sorrow. They left Jesus alone to deal with his own sorrow. Sorry, I should have told you to keep your finger in Matthew 26. Back in Matthew chapter 26, verse 45, it picks up there. 45 and 50. It says, we already read, Sleep on now, take your rest. Behold, the hour is at hand. Rise, let us be going. Behold, he is at hand that doth betray me. And while he yet spake low, Judas, one of the 12, came, and with him a great multitude with swords and staves from the chief priests and elders of the people. Now he that betrayed him gave them a sign, saying, Whomever I shall kiss, that same is he, hold him fast. And forthwith he came to Jesus and said, Hail, Master, and kissed him. And Jesus said unto him, Friend, wherefore art thou come? Then came they and laid hands on Jesus and took him. And at this moment, their time to watch and pray with Jesus has passed. He's been betrayed. All alone. He grieved alone, and now he's going to continue alone. Turn to number 998 of your book, your psalm book. Another song we like to sing prior to the Lord's Supper. And rightfully so, because it talks about what he was going through before all this. In the second verse, it says, Smitten for offenses which were not his own, he for our transgressions had to weep alone. No friends with words to comfort, nor hand to help was there, when the meek and lowly humbly bowed in prayer. And so we see, this is just, really sad language in this song, but it really portrays exactly what was going on. No hand was there to help. Not even men that had watched him do so many things that were just unbelievable. Not even those people could stay up with him. Jesus was alone in the garden, but like I said, in Matthew chapter 28, verse 20, he will never leave us, and that's comforting. So Jesus leaves, he's betrayed, now he's headed over to Pilate. And Brad, I think, talked about this a little bit, so I won't belabor too much of this. But Matthew 26 and verse 55, it says there, "In that same hour said Jesus to the multitudes, 'Are you come out as against a thief with swords and staves to take me? I sat daily with you teaching in the temple, and you laid no hold on me. But all this was done that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples forsook him and fled." Disciples take off. They're gone. Left him alone. Leave your finger there. We're going to come back to this at some point. But Mark 14. Mark 14. In verse 50. "And they all forsook him and fled. And there followed him a certain young man, having a linen cloth cast about his naked body. And the young men laid hold on him, and he left the linen cloth and fled from them naked." And I'm not trying to read a verse that's lewd, but can you imagine they're trying to grab his shirt and say, "Hey, you stay with us," and he's gone to the point where he just runs off naked. That's how much he couldn't stay with Jesus. That's how much he wanted to flee from the situation that Jesus was being put in. Luke 22, verse 54 through 62. I think maybe Brent had went over this account earlier, but of course Peter's denial, we all know about that. Peter denied him 3 times. In verse 74 of Matthew 26, it talks about Peter went so far as to curse and swear that he did not know the man. And then Luke 22, verses 60 through 62, the third denial, Peter ran out weeping because obviously he knew how badly he just was, did the Lord Jesus. John chapter 19. John chapter 19, starting in verse 12. "And from thenceforth Pilate sought to release him. But the Jews cried out, saying, 'If thou let this man go, thou art not Caesar's friend. Whosoever maketh himself a king speaketh against Caesar.' When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Jesus forth and sat down in the judgment seat, in a place that is called the Pavement, but in the Hebrew, Gabbatha. And it was the preparation of the Passover, and about the 6th hour, and he saith unto the Jews, 'Behold your king.' But they cried out, 'Away with him, crucify him.' Pilate saith unto them, 'Shall I crucify your king?' The chief priests answered, 'We have no king but Caesar.' Then delivered he him therefore unto them to be crucified, and they took Jesus and led him away." So Jesus is, of course, before Pilate. And Jesus is condemned to death to cheering crowds chanting, "Crucify him, crucify him." All alone. No one's with him. No disciple, no apostle, no one. Number 566 in your songbook. 566. Now, this one hits a little bit more in the old personal button. I'll be a friend to Jesus. Now, I can tell you that Peter and the rest of the apostles probably felt like they could sing this song with a lot of conviction, a lot of confidence, and, oh yes, I'll be a friend to Jesus. And we see how long that lasted. When the going got tough, they ran away from him and fled him. In verse 1, "They tried my Lord and Master, with no one to defend. Within the halls of Pilate, he stood without a friend." In the chorus, "I'll be a friend to Jesus. My life for him I'll spend. I'll be a friend to Jesus until my years shall end." And how many times for just little, for nothing? We leave the friendship of Jesus because we want to do something sinful, or we don't have the conviction to not do the right thing, or whatever the case may be. We skip doing the right thing. I can almost see the disciples, man, that was tough. I mean, they were basically running away from death probably, because they were going to go right with him. I mean, at least they were like, I'm not going to lose my life for this. And then sometimes we want him as a friend when, man, things are good. When things are bad and lonely and sinful, doesn't really. They tried my Lord and Master. I'm not a friend. Let's not find ourselves in that spot. But the other point to this is we have a friend with him. And we mentioned that in Matthew 28. That when things get tough and things get lonely and we feel alone, we do have a friend with Jesus. Okay, so Luke 23. Luke chapter 23. I'll try to hurry this up to stay on my usual target here. Luke chapter 23 and verse 20 it says, Pilate therefore, willing to release Jesus, spake again to them. But they cried, saying, Crucify him, crucify him. And he said unto them the third time, Why? What evil hath he done? I have found no cause of death in him. I will therefore chastise him and let him go. And they were instant with loud voices, requiring that he might be crucified. And the voices of them and of the chief priests prevailed. And so we see here, Pilate wants to release Jesus, but the crowd prevailed. Crucify him, crucify him. You know, Jesus stood before Pilate alone. I want you to imagine, hopefully I won't have to do this. Maybe my brothers would oblige me, but if I got in trouble and I stood before a court by myself. Now, there are some people, I've watched a lot of Dateline and some of these other shows where people are trying to represent themselves, and I'm like, man, this is not going to go well, and it doesn't. But imagine being there, you don't have anybody to help you. Now, luckily, the law provides some kind of court-appointed defense. But think about that. If your life was on the line, you were accused of something that was really bad and could be really either a long sentence of jail or worse, death. All alone, nobody's there to help you. That'd be a terrible feeling. And this is what Jesus is going through. He's all alone. No one's there to advocate for him. They're all, crucify him, crucify him. John 15. John chapter 15 and verse 14. Says, You are my friends if you do whatsoever I command you. That's a comforting scripture. I hope that's one that we'll take with us tonight. Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 5. Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 5. Says, Let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as ye have, for he hath said, I will never leave thee, nor forsake thee, so that we may boldly say that the Lord is my helper, and I will not fear what man shall do unto me. We should be able to take these scriptures with us in times where we find ourselves alone and in loneliness, and understand that even though there was a lot of people that left Jesus alone in his time of despair, that he will be here for us for our time of despair, and that's very comforting. These scriptures allow for that. Finally, Jesus was alone at the cross, as we probably can imagine. In Matthew chapter 27, in verse 45, says, Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And he truly felt alone at this moment, of course. But even though he was forsaken, his Father was with him. We know of scriptures. John chapter 8 and verse 29, it talks about Jesus talking about how his Father was with him this whole time. John chapter 8 and verse 29, he that sent me is with me. The Father hath not left me alone, for I do always those things that please him. If you'll turn to John chapter 16 and verse 32, it says, Behold, the hour cometh, yea, is now come, that ye shall be scattered, every man to his own, shall leave me alone. We read this, and yet I am not alone, because the Father is with me. Now, he felt alone, and he felt that people had left him, but God was with him during that moment. God was with him, and he'll be with us in moments like this. So the crowd is watching and mocking him, as we know in Mark chapter 15. Mark chapter 15 and verse 29. Says, And they that passed by railed on him, wagging their heads and saying, Ah, thou that destroyest the temple and buildest it in 3 days, save thyself and come down from the cross. Likewise also the chief priests mocking said among themselves with the scribes, He saved others, himself he cannot save. Let Christ the King of Israel descend now from the cross, that we may see and believe, and they that were crucified with him reviled him. Watched many a movie where I've known the outcome is going to be good because this guy has all the power to take care of this nonsense. Man, the evil guys are just giving the good guy, something like this. And man, he's going to get him. But Jesus took that and ate it for us because he had to. It was the will of the Father that he ate that alone. Listen to that nonsense. Stuff that he could have taken care of. Stuff that he could have squashed out. John chapter 19. There were some soldiers there, of course. John chapter 19 and verse 23. Then the soldiers, when they had crucified Jesus, took his garments and made 4 parts, to every soldier a part, and also his coat. Now the coat was without seam, woven from the top throughout. They said therefore among themselves, let us not rend it, but cast lots for it, whose it shall be, that the scripture might be fulfilled, which saith, they parted my raiment among them, and for my vesture they did cast lots. These things therefore the soldiers did. Weren't there to help. Soldiers were there with the mocking and the nonsense that went on. As we know, there were 2 thieves on the cross. Luke chapter 23. They got a word in. Luke chapter 23 and verse 39. And one of the malefactors which were hanged railed on him, saying, If thou be Christ, save thyself and us. But the other answering rebuked him, saying, Dost not thou fear God, seeing thou art in the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds, but this man hath done nothing amiss. And he said unto Jesus, Lord, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. And Jesus said unto him, Verily I say unto thee, today thou shalt be with me in paradise. So the Lord's alone here. He's got thieves next to him, and they're sitting there mocking him as well. There's a list of people that are there. He wasn't just 100% alone. Mary, Jesus' mother, Mary Magdalene, and some others that were there. They talk about people that were afar off that had come with him from Galilee and followed him through Jerusalem that were there as well. But there wasn't really anything they could do. There wasn't anything that could have taken his spot or brought him down, and certainly they didn't. So there's thieves on either side of him, crowds of soldiers, enemies, friends, and disciples all around him by the cross and from a distance. But hanging there on the cross, Jesus was all alone. 10,000 angels, 329. Last little, well, not the last time we go to it, but this is the song that, you kind of listen to and, yeah, he could have squashed all this out, The 4th verse, to the howling mob he yielded. He did not for mercy cry. The cross of shame he took alone. When he cried, it's finished, he gave himself to die. Salvation's wondrous plan was done. He did it alone. He took it alone. And it says there, he could have called 10,000 angels to destroy the world and set him free. He could have called 10,000 angels, but he died alone for you and me. An ultimate example of loneliness, despair, the harshest of loneliness. Jesus hung on the cross alone for the sins of the world and for us, but was raised and lives to make intercession for us that we never stand alone. Isn't that amazing? That's an amazing love. Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 25, the last scripture I have. Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 25. Wherefore he is able also to save them to the uttermost that come unto God by him, seeing he ever liveth to make intercession for them. He makes intercession for us. He advocates for us. He doesn't allow us to be alone. He'll never leave us or forsake us. But he had to stand on the cross. He had to go through Gethsemane. He had to go through the trial with Pilate all by himself. All by himself. While man failed Christ, he will not fail his followers. Christ will not. Let us not forsake Christ, but live in such a way that we are his friends, as the song says. And as such, we will never have to stand alone. And that's a comforting thought that I hope I leave you with. In those times, not standing behind the gymnasium at Lee High School where you're alone waiting on a ride, but the truly dark, despairing times where you're alone and you have no one to turn to, Jesus and God are there. They'll never leave us or forsake us. Turn it back to 651 just real quick to finish. The chorus. Hold my hand all the way, every hour, every day. From here to the great unknown, take my hand, let me stand where no one stands alone. We don't stand alone. Jesus has done some things that he did alone. And shamefully, people left him alone. People fled from him. People ran away from him. People cursed and swear that they didn't know him. All for us to not have to stand alone. Not for us to worry about the loneliness that we have in our lives. I hope that what we've said and studied has been beneficial to you. We never know the minds of those that are present, but we want to offer an invitation to be baptized, to become a child of God, and to wash away your sins and become a new creature. We want to obviously offer you that invitation. Or maybe you're lonely, or maybe you're dealing with something that you need help with, and you're not alone. Jesus is here to listen. God's here to listen. We're here to listen and offer up our shoulders and comfort. Want to offer that to anyone as well. One of either case, we'd ask you to come as we stand and sing.